is Norwich Confidential with your hosts, Dr. Ben Hong, Bonnie Hong, and Mr. Bob Farwell.
Hello, I'm Ben Hong, and welcome.
I'm Bonnie Hong, and this is Norwich Confidential. We're continuing our series on the election coming up on November 3rd, introducing the candidates so that all of us can be informed voters.
And these are candidates for a city treasurer for the city of Norwich. And we really are very fortunate to have the two of them, very qualified candidates for one position. Unfortunately, I wish we had two of them. But well,
Two
anyway.
positions for treasurer? Is that what you mean?
Right.
Okay. We'll introduce you to both of our candidates. Or rather than that, I'm going to have them introduce themselves so that you can hear a little bit of their background. Our first guest.
Hi, I'm Brian Curtin. I've been the city treasurer since 2007, January 1st. So it's been close to 9 years. We've, I think, run a pretty good operation in the time. We've taken the position or the function from somewhat antiquated systems into, I think, 21st century. And
Okay.
We're pretty proud of where we are right now.
Okay. And our second guest.
Hi, I'm Mike Gualtieri. I'm recently retired from the Chelsea Groton Bank. After a 32-and-a-half-year career in community banking, I've been born, raised, educated, and live in Norwich with my wife and two children, and recently served on the Charter Revision Committee, learned a lot about the city operations and the dynamic of the city, and became interested in the position of city treasurer, and I'm here today.
Thank you both. We really appreciate your coming in. I think most people, when they realize we have a city treasurer, first of all, are surprised. I don't think they think that you're kind of like, oh, I don't know, the registrar of voters that maybe can also register voters like the city clerk can do.
But they do hold the most important position, because without their signatures, nothing can come out of the city of Norwich money.
There are no checks without their
checks.
signature.
That's right.
So that one of your main responsibilities is obviously to invest the city funds prudently. Let's find out how you intend to do that. We'll start with you, Mr. Curtin.
Well, the city funds, you have to you have to make a distinction among the various types of funds that we're talking about. We have a pension fund that totals about $150 million, which we have with a fund manager, Mark Shigoski of UBS in New Jersey. That's in the market and split between fixed income and securities. We have smaller funds like the Firefighters Relief Fund and the Cemetery Fund, both of them about $1.2 million to $1.5 million, which are dedicated to specific functions, and those also are in securities and fixed income with brokers.
All right. Do you see making any changes in the next couple of years?
We haven't. Everybody seems happy with our fund managers that we have
What
at
have
this
been the
point.
results over?
Well, the results. We're in the pension fund. Everybody got hit in 2008 with an enormous downturn. We lost about 30% of our value, but because the fund has an allocation between fixed income and securities, we were able to weather the storm and recover. And about several months ago, we got back to where we were at about 153 million. We then got up to 161 million, and we've had the most recent downturn, which took about 11 million out of it.
Back to baseline. But I think we're kind of jumping a little bit forward, Bonnie, because we really need to talk about how the city's treasurer run the city finances.
Well, before I think before we do that, I would like to at least give Mr. Gualtieri an opportunity to answer that same question, if that's all right.
Absolutely.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
What do you see as...
Well, just to add on what Brian's been talking about, the biggest effect that the city treasurer can have on the city is through the pension fund and the rate of return that it earns. Now, currently, Norwich is earning a little over 14%, which compares to about a 16% average in Connecticut towns. Norwich is ranked about 109th out of 161, so there is room for improvement. And I feel through
Well,
my...
14% sounds wonderful to most of us who have our
It
own...
is, yeah, but comparatively speaking, 16% is the average for towns in Connecticut, so that's 2% under. And when you're talking about $150 million, 2% on $150 million is $3 million.
Are you talking about the 14% over the long term? I mean, because what was it?
Annualized.
Right.
Annually, right.
So even considering the downturns that we've had, they've still been able to maintain?
Currently,
Okay.
yeah, currently.
That's as it's gone back up?
Correct.
Okay.
Yes. And
Well, are you saying that we should be changing how we do it?
I think that there's room for improvement.
Which means what?
Well, it means that the city would earn, based on about $150 million in pension fund, about $3 million. And the higher
How would you achieve that? I mean, what would you do to achieve
your,
that?
your investment mix, as
So
Brian was stating.
you would change where the money is currently held and...
Perhaps, or maybe investment firms, but you do work with a board, so through experience, knowledge, contacts, you look for better returns.
Okay.
Well, are you saying that experience in investing would be one of the quality for a good treasurer then?
Absolutely.
Okay. And I always thought that being a treasurer means that you don't lose your money doing something else, and that every cent is to be accounted for. But I didn't realize that you also have to think ahead and think about where should the money go to earn a lot more than what you're doing now, because on the other side of the coin is that you could lose a lot more than what you would be losing.
Right. I mean, when you said in 2008...
Can I speak
Yes,
to
please. Yes.
this whole thing? The primary function of the treasurer is not investing. In the first place, the 14% that he's talking about, and the 16%, is the rebound from the low that everybody hit. So once that's smoothed, and you get to the point that that's behind you, which we are right now this year, we're looking at what most municipalities are looking at is somewhere between 7 and 8% expected return on the fund. But the treasurer doesn't get to do that. We have a personnel and pension board who is charged with that. The treasurer is just the fiduciary for the city that is the backstop for signing financial documents for them and is at their disposal when they need them. But the treasurer does not make the investment decisions. The personnel and pension board does. It's made up of citizens, a mix of private citizens and current employees in the city. But far more important is what you said, Ben, is that maintaining and protecting the assets of the city, which are our daily taxation. We handle, in the treasurer's office, on the city side, about $125 to $130 million that come in, is accounted for both as cash and accounted for against the general ledger to be balanced, so that we know exactly how much money we've got, where it is, and how it's being spent. We also are charged with we have to protect the money that the city has, and that's prime importance. We've got safeguards built in that do that. One of my staff just caught some bad check artists that had had printed their own checks. They had gotten a hold of a check with my signature on it,
A city check.
a city check.
Oh, my goodness.
And
You
they
only see that-
they were running off checks and going out and trying to negotiate them. And she caught it because we have what they call a positive pay function on our checking accounts, which if it's not transmitted to the bank as a check that we wrote, the bank questions it and won't cash it until we've approved it. And she looked at it and she knew right away that it wasn't one of ours.
Yeah, because we hear a lot of these things in the newspaper that some city treasurer end up losing a lot of money unknowingly or knowingly because of something going on. And obviously your first priority, of course, is to prevent any such loss.
Absolutely.
But that's great. I mean, I think that it was picked up before the city lost.
We never lost. Oh no, we never lost any
That's
money.
incredible.
And she protected it. It was we ended up covering tracking down about $10,000 or $11,000 worth of checks with a group of people who are now being prosecuted
Wonderful.
for
Can
for
I
what
just
they
ask,
did.
was this ever a news article?
Yes,
It
was in
was.
the newspaper. Yeah. yeah,
Okay.
it
I
was.
guess
Yeah.
I have to apologize
Yeah,
to the
yeah, about 6 months ago, 6 or 8 months
it
ago.
was-
Yeah, it's been a while.
older. Okay.
But we also, I mean, we have to be sure that that the funds are where they are supposed to be. That checks that we issue go to the places that they're supposed to get. We're really trying to get away from checks entirely. We're trying to do electronic payments.
Which is, by the way, one of the referendum questions. Because currently...
We've been doing it for a long time. We're just
Well,
trying to catch up
to make
with.
it legal, to make it by the
Well,
charter.
we did by the charter, yeah.
the charter.
Yeah, the wording in the charter was such that,
You have
you
to
know, when that
personally
charter was
sign.
written, all they had were paper checks.
Right.
But the state of Connecticut has accepted electronic transfer of funds as checks
Right.
for a number of years now. So we knew we were on firm legal ground doing it, but that we knew that the next charter revision had to change that language, which it did.
Well, I think having an electronic system will give you a real-time analysis of what your day-to-day cash flow is going to be. So let me ask Michael about this. Obviously, what we're talking about is having day-to-day activities coming from the treasurer's office on what is coming in and what is going out. And obviously, most of the time, we don't want to be second or third quarter late in knowing, oh my God, we really overspent this time. So how would you say balance the budget, if I may ask that way?
Balance the budget as far as authorizations, or
No, I
I'm not
mean-
sure what you're asking.
Well,
Well, how do you envision the job? What would you, do you have any changes you want to make in the job? Is there a different approach that you would have? What are you offering? What is your candidacy offering?
You can't spend what you're not authorized to spend.
correct.
And you're authorized by the city, okay, to pay obligations, and I don't see how you would change that.
Okay.
I can
Well-
Go ahead.
speak to that
Yes.
if I might. We have, the reason that we have a treasurer is because the state requires that we have a treasurer, and there's a very good reason for it. It's because I can't initiate payments. I can fulfill them. It's the finance director who initiates them. And if you're worried about getting into situations where huge losses happen within an organization where somebody an organization's money ends up in a casino or some such thing, it's usually one person that is both initiating and authorizing that money, which we don't. We have a check and balance in the city of Norwich, which is
Yeah.
why it's a good thing to have an elected treasurer versus an appointed finance
well,
director.
That's correct. What about cases of emergency? For instance, some horrendous fire and so on like that, that the fire department had to spend a lot more than what they were budgeted for.
We maintain a fund balance.
You do have
We
a general
Oh
fund.
yeah, I have. I know where all the money is. I mean,
Yeah.
I know how much we have and what's on hand. And we always have money to cover emergencies. That's
And-
why you have a fund balance.
And what your role is really is to protect that balance. Is that correct?
Well,
You
protect the
never
balance.
want to overspend whatever is.
But I don't
there.
get to
That is-
choose. What I do, and this happened a couple of years ago because we were, the way the process works, we had bonded a lot of projects. Kelly Middle School was in process. There were road bonds that were being done. There were three different projects that we were paying on. And we hadn't gone into the bond market yet. They were waiting until the best possible moment for rates in the bond market. So this was in December, maybe 2 or 3 years ago, that we started getting low cash on hand. We weren't in trouble because we knew we had those bond proceeds coming in January, but we had to. We wanted the best possible rate, so they were waiting until January to go into the market on them. So we got a little, somewhat uncomfortably low, lower than we like to be, but we had enough to cover it. It was not a problem.
Well, does that have to do with, there is another referendum question that sounds like it's related. You'd have to explain to me what this actually is, but it's the scope of the capital budget. It's the ballot question, referendum question number 5, where the question is, shall the charter amendment provision removing the requirements of the city treasurer to deposit capital improvement funds in a separate bank account until invested be approved?
Well, that's really just housekeeping, because when I started as treasurer, we had probably 50 or 60 separate accounts within the general fund, separate bank accounts. And every function in the city had its own account.
Right.
And we've worked that down to about 10 accounts now, which are mandated that we have to have. You know,
Separate
just individual accounts
not
within
even-
within the
All right,
city.
okay.
Used to be that there was a separate account for just about everything. And now we do it within our accounting system.
You have software that
Yeah, all the
shows
software
that-
does
right,
that.
Right.
So we then, any money that comes in that's there for capital or whatever it might be is within that general fund assigned to an account line within it. And it's just there. So we're able to just use that whole block of money within the general fund, and then we prorate the interest among the various groups.
Okay, because I think to make it a little bit more understandable, it's as if I have a checking account, but I don't have one checking account just for my food. I don't have
Right.
another checking account that I only buy clothes with.
Right.
I don't have another checking account that I just purchase gas with. You know,
Right.
it's like
Exactly.
one checking account, but I can itemize it all out. And with software, it's even easier. So
It's-
that's
right,
what
it's
you're
like-
basically saying.
I like to think, if you think back to the old bookkeeping days where you kept a ledger,
Yes.
where
That's
Right.
it
Yes.
added up across and down and had to balance. That's basically what we're doing, only it's computerized now. So-
Okay. So do you have anything, explain to me why you're running for treasurer, Michael.
Well, I got interested in it several years ago. I was asked to take a look at running. I wasn't interested at the time. Became more interested in it during the Charter Revision Committee. I had retired 2013, and I wanted to pick up something part-time. I learned more about the position during the process, and it seems interesting, and I wanted to give it a shot.
It was my understanding, especially from speaking with the controller, who is a person that the treasurer works very closely with. Actually, everyone within the finance department of the city. But I understand that, you know, the treasurer actually has his own office within the department. Well, it's kind of an open wall thing.
Right.
But it's within the office of the finance department. And I thought this was full-time. From what I understood, it was full-time. This isn't a part-time job.
What I've been told, it's part-time, but part-time could be 20 hours, 30 hours, 40 hours. It doesn't matter. I'm retired, so whatever it takes.
Okay, because it did seem to me,
You
according
work
to the...
40 hours, Brian?
I don't count hours, but I have only, in 9 years, I've only missed 8 days in City Hall,
And according to the controller, you're there almost all the time.
all the time.
All the time, yeah.
All the time?
Yes.
Okay. I won't say almost.
Yeah.
All
Now,
right.
Brian, who do you work with closely? I mean, you're
I-
answerable to the city manager, of course.
No,
No.
no, I'm
Directly.
answered to the voters.
Right.
I am a
Yes.
department head who answers to the voters of the city of Norwich. I am their guardian of their cash, and that's the way it's designed, and
Then I
that's
feel better with my money.
yeah, and that's how we do it, and that's why I take
Right.
it very seriously. I am there.
Hopefully, yes.
But I have an assistant who works closely with me, who's very talented, and I have an accounting assistant as well. So the three of us.
And
run
how
the
is your
treasury.
relationship with the other elected officials as well as the administration? We're talking about city council members as well as the city manager's office, administrations, and so on.
I've always had a good relationship.
Right,
Yeah,
right.
sure.
So when the time comes for, say, for instance, decisions on raising taxes and so on, is that part of your decision?
That's
too?
not. All I do is keep the cash and write the check and sign the checks. But that's a misunderstanding that people have, that somehow the treasurer has control over how much we spend.
Oh, no,
That's
no,
not
no.
true.
What I'm trying to
I think-
ask you is how much input do you get into
I
that?
try to have a lot of input because I spent time on the city council as
yes.
well. I was back in the 90s. I was there for 5 years, and I know how the function works.
Yeah.
I've been
Yes.
there, and I've been on multiple sides of it. So
I think for our listeners, the easiest way to understand what the treasurer does, in any organization, the two worst jobs ever, it's never the president or any of the officers. The two worst jobs in any organization is that of the secretary and the treasurer. They are, in any organization, it's not the treasurer who raises the money, but they definitely have to check to see that every check that goes out is actually been approved by somebody else, and to control.
And that's very important because if treasurer is really steadfast in what he thinks is right, then it's very difficult for outsides influence or forces to really come down on you and say, hey, listen, I really need this for my project and so on, that you have this discretionary fund.
can't do it anyway.
Can't do it.
Can't do it.
Right.
do it.
I couldn't
would
do,
say.
and rightfully so, that I shouldn't be able to do it, because that's what gets people in trouble, is that idea that they can manipulate and do that sort of thing, and we can't do it. I can't initiate that check without Josh Pothier
Yes.
signing off on it. It would have to come from him, but he can't do it either without me, so it works.
It's very similar to how we handle money in Rotary, not anywhere near those kind of amounts. But you have to have at least 2 board members that sign off on a bill before the treasurer
Right.
would even write the check.
Right.
It doesn't matter who the check's for, but if you don't have 2 independent board members that have looked at that bill and are willing to sign off on it, that vendor doesn't get paid, so. Mike, what would you contribute to the office of treasurer?
Well, through my education and experience in banking, I've gained a lot of knowledge. I've met a lot of folks. I have a lot of contacts in the area and throughout the state. I could offer all the knowledge that I've gained and work closely with those people. Pretty easy guy to work with, and do the best, for the city, the taxpayers.
Okay.
Well, let me ask Brian. You said 9 years as being treasurer, is that right?
Right.
What's-
Almost.
Almost 9 years.
2 months short.
Well,
Okay.
we can just round that off. Was there a time when you really felt that, hey, listen, I'm really so fed up with this position that I just want to get out of here?
Or what have been the most difficult
Right.
parts of the position?
Well, the most difficult part is finding your way into it, because I don't care who you are, going into a position like that, people can tell you anything they want until you're there
And
and
have to look
doing
at the
it.
books, right?
You have to. You can only imagine what it is. It isn't what you think it is going in. I had the luxury of working for a couple of months prior to taking over the position, so I at least knew where the desk was and everything. But
What about you? You said you do have staff.
I've got 2.
How, is there a part of the budget that appropriates a certain amount of money for staff? for
Right.
the
Our
treasurer's
budget is
office?
about $206,000 a year that
Okay.
covers, it's basically 3 of us, 3 people and some supplies.
Okay,
That's
but
it.
you just obviously, 6 months ago, 6 months ago, your office saved us quite a bit of money. If you-
Well, but-
if you think about forged checks that didn't get cashed,
Right, but that's
So-
what we do.
Right.
That is the job, is that part of it. Things like that are what we're there for. And it's, my assistant just redesigned the general fund ledger spreadsheet, so that we now, it's an old spreadsheet that dates back years ago. And she's now got it to the point, apropos to what you were saying a little while ago, that we know at any minute exactly how much money is available.
for any
It's
department.
balanced in that spreadsheet. And it's, that's on the cash side. On the accounting side, we also know. But on the cash side, we know exactly where we are at any given moment, with only maybe a handful of things that are in transit.
So do you think that this was a very good improvement as far as
Absolutely.
your office is concerned? to be
Absolutely.
knowing exactly how much is going out at any given moment, of course.
Well, we always know how much is going out. That isn't the problem. It's keeping these accounts in balance so that you're not going, one of the biggest things always has been at the end of the month, you have to close out the months and balance the account. Well, you got to go back through history over 30 days, where now she's got this
Yeah.
to the point
Yes.
that the history is updated with the exception of anything that's in transit, so that it makes balancing much easier.
Just like in a small business, you got to make sure that your cash flow is there at the end of the month.
I'm a small, I spent my life in small business. I know exactly what
Yes.
you mean.
So one of the other missions of the treasurer is to maintain a complete archive of all current city deeds So
Yeah,
I
yeah.
assume the deeds are property deeds, is what they're talking
No, it's not deeds, it's contracts.
Oh, okay.
Contracts.
Contracts.
We're the repository of all city contracts. So we have the hard copies filed, and we also have them they're scanned into the computer as well. So,
Also for any leases?
yeah, city leases, any
and
contract that involves the city of Norwich, yes.
Okay. Would this also?
But this isn't, not property records. That would be the...
Just city clerk.
Town
Yeah.
clerk.
Town clerk?
That would be the clerk and the assessor that would be involved in that. I'm talking about any contract that the city might enter into, whether it be for improvements to a
Waste?
building or...
Or the new waste management?
Waste management, any of those. We're the repository for that.
Okay, so if I wanted to take a look at that contract.
It's available.
Because my garbage is never getting picked up on time appropriately every Wednesday morning. Okay, I know where to go now. Okay, that's good. So you worked a great deal on the budget, on the referendum, I'm sorry, on the
On the Charter Revision Committee.
Charter Revision
Correct.
Committee,
Yeah.
which is what the referendum in November is all about.
They've adopted some of our suggestions.
18 of them? You had
Yeah.
more?
Yeah.
I don't think they could fit more than 18 on the ballot. This is already becoming overwhelming, and I think my biggest problem with the referendum, because I was hoping to spend the last part of the program on the referendum questions. 18 questions is considerable. I mean, when you consider it takes up, our ballot in November is 2 sides. There are a number of referendum questions that actually affect money. And people really have to understand, this is not worded in a way you can easily understand it.
It is not.
No, it really isn't. You have to, unless you have the city charter in front of you, and you know what you're looking at, and you can understand some legalese, you do not really know what it is you're voting for. And I think that's a real problem. So for the one that specifically affects the city treasurer, I can't remember the exact question. I did write it down already, didn't I? Which is the question that affects the city treasurer? Oh, the way we pay, the city pays its bills.
Right.
I think we went over that. That one, you don't happen to know which number that is, do you?
Not offhand, no.
But there is one that says the city treasurer doesn't, it is housekeeping, as he said, because we do pay electronically many of our bills, so it can be bank transfer. He is not necessarily taking pen on paper and signing his signature any longer. So that one, why would that be? Because we want to change the words in the charter, it has to be voted on.
Correct.
What happens
Yeah.
if everybody says no to that because they didn't understand it?
Well, you have to keep doing things the way you're doing them now, and it's
Which
probably not as efficient as
No,
you'd
right
like it to
now,
be.
we are doing
Yeah.
it electronically and doing bank transfers because the state says it's okay to do that. So does it make any sense if we have, if it's not being explained to the point where people really understand that this is not going to affect the way, this is one that should just be yes, because it's not going
It
to
should
change
be.
the...
Because it really doesn't matter, because there's always that trail of electronic trail
Which is
that
why
you
this-
can
right.
go back on and
Right, which
review.
is why the
and it's
state said
easier to
yes.
do that
Right.
rather than going back on the signed check that you had done.
But
And
Yeah,
what happens when the voters say no?
I think that they should be educated, and we should all be
We're
educated,
trying,
and
but-
that's what we're trying to do.
But these
And
are
it
not
is a
written in a
modern-
way that...
There's a
that
modern way of doing business too, Bonnie. I mean, this is a real-time indication of what goes out.
The state has already passed judgment on that, because you can't do business with the state anymore without doing electronic
exactly.
transfer of
Right.
funds.
Right.
So they can't say that the city of Norwich can't do it.
Right.
Yeah, in the committee, when we were meeting, doesn't meet that often. You don't have a charter revision committee every year, and we wanted to take the opportunity to clean up those housekeeping issues and bring it in
Well,
to the
Excellent,
current
yes.
environment.
Right, but some of them are not just housekeeping issues.
No.
The one where many of us pay our taxes instead of paying half of it now and half of it later because it might be easier to do it that way. Those that wanted to pay it all at once and get the discount are no longer going to be able to get a discount
I'm not sure what you're talking about. Discount for what?
for paying. I will find it. Because it's not even worded in a way that I could understand it until the...
I'm not aware of getting a discount on your
City-
taxes.
No, you're not charged, you do. You get, it's not a discount. I'm using the wrong wording. Let me find it. Ask them a question and I will find it. Let me
Okay.
read through this. I know it was just,
Well, obviously the role of the city treasurer is very important because if you look at other cities like Detroit or Bridgeport, at some time in the past, they sometimes get into trouble. So how could that come to that situation if the treasurer is really watching every dollar that goes out? How can that happen?
Well,
Yeah, those are spending
Right.
issues.
Yeah,
In
you-
the
But
And the treasurer cannot authorize expenditures. The treasurer acts on behalf of those that authorize.
so the authorization has already been there that the
Right.
check should be going out.
but if the treasurer sees that that expenditure is an impossibility based on cash on hand, then you say, no, we're not going to, we can't do this.
So
and
you
refuse
do
to.
have a
Absolutely.
veto type
course.
of power to
Of
say,
course.
hey, listen, we're writing checks
Yeah.
and there's no
There's
money
no-
in the bank.
If there was no money to cover it, the
Right.
treasurer would be certainly fiscally wrong to sign a check knowing that it's not any good.
Well,
Right.
did the treasurer of the city of Detroit
I don't know that
or
answer.
Bridgeport get into trouble?
Well, those were more, those were cases whereby I don't think they had bounced checks as such as they depleted all of their funds
and then
to the
just couldn't
degree
pay
that
anything.
they were only releasing what they had on hand at the moment. I don't think it was a
So
question
the
of
bills weren't
overdrawing.
paid, right?
It's
And
a
it-
question
yeah.
of letting
Well,
the fund
but-
balance.
And in the city of Detroit, I believe it specifically dealt with pensions. They could not afford the pensions.
Well, we have been through that here in Norwich also several years ago when we could not fully fund the pension. And I think that's one of the things that was a major issue at that time. But what I'm trying to say is this, that the city have certain obligations to pay certain amount of money.
Correct. To
Because
the pension fund.
or whatever, whatever obligation it has, say a lease or a contract and so on. And how could a city not be able to meet those kind of payment?
Because they've overspent.
Exactly. So,
But
so
that's not
who-
the treasurer that decides
So
that.
Right.
who authorizes the
They don't get
overspending?
paid. Nobody. The treasurer can't sign a check if there's no money in the account. And that can cause a problem if you don't have the tax dollars coming in to pay for the services that are required.
The-
In Detroit, they stopped giving water because they
So
didn't
what you're
have it. But
saying is-
let me go back to the taxes since we're
Right.
talking about the collection of taxes. It's the referendum question number 9 that specifically has to do with the taxes. Shall the charter amendment eliminating the provision that allows for a possible discount on taxes if all installment of the tax liability are paid on or before the first business day in August be approved? Now, I did not understand what that meant.
That's a
until-
housekeeping issue.
Yeah, it's just
Yeah.
housekeeping.
It's
It
not.
was illegal then.
Yeah. It's not,
They
it's
are
not
no
a, it's not a
longer
practice in...
providing up to 2%
Right.
discount on the property
No.
tax?
Can't do
No.
that.
Can't
No.
do that.
Oh, so this
Yeah,
is not,
It's a housekeeping issue.
'Cause-
Because you can't do it, it's clean up the charter is what it's doing.
now why doesn't it say that? Because even when I asked the question of
I didn't
those-
write it.
That was wishful thinking on the part of
Yeah.
someone who wrote that charter many, many years ago.
And it was never
perhaps at the-
implemented?
Perhaps it was, but in the meantime, it has been disavowed as a possibility for a municipality to, you can't give discounts on taxes, no matter what.
So
You don't have
primarily,
that right.
This really wasn't even implemented or
No.
even practiced.
It's a-
in
it's
the
a-
city
it's a
of
housekeeping
Norwich.
issue. Yeah.
Because I never get the discount.
Yeah.
anyway.
Right.
So
Yeah.
I get penalized, but I never get discounted.
Your taxes are due and payable
Right.
on
A certain-
July 1st of the year, of that year.
Right.
You are allowed to pay it in 2 installments.
Right.
And that's basically it.
Yeah, that's all.
There's nothing in there
Right.
about any discount for early
Because the
payment.
explanation doesn't say any of that. If I were just reading this, and it says the current charter language allows the city council, through the budget approval process, to provide up to a 2% discount on property taxes for taxpayers who pay both installments by August 1st. The proposed language removes the option to approve such a discount. If I were just reading that without your explanation, I would have just assumed that, wow, if I pay both installments by August 1st, I get up to a 2% discount on my property tax. That's what the charter says.
Wow.
I'm going to really look into
That
that.
has never been in practice. no.
So
Yeah.
this is not, it really should be very well explained that the majority of these are housekeeping. Although, are you telling me that the one about the mayor may attend, or that's a housekeeping one as well? The charter provides that the mayor, the current charter provides the mayor shall attend state, regional, and national conferences. The revision committee says that, no, it should read, the mayor may attend.
We recommended that,
Yeah.
the word may instead of shall.
Why?
The mayor can't attend everything, okay? The mayor should attend those functions which are important to the running of the city, and associated with that, there's an expense. So it should be up to the mayor or the town council what's appropriate to attend. And the word shall is just not, it's not a working word, so to speak.
The same with being to provide the mayor shall be an ex officio non-voting member of all commissions and committees rather than a voting member. That isn't just a cleanup, is it? You're changing the mayor being
yeah.
able to vote on the committees and commissions rather than,
That,
because she is automatic, or he or
Yeah.
she is automatically a member of those
yeah.
committees.
That is an issue that had a lot of discussion, and you know, without the committee, I wouldn't want to offer thoughts
Just
on
talk to
their,
me.
on
Just,
their,
I mean,
on
why?
their behalf.
Well, what were your thoughts? I mean, you don't have to speak for somebody else. What are your thoughts?
Well, yeah, you know, the mayor's going to have input on everything, okay? And to be a voting member on everything that is decisive, we didn't think that was, you know, appropriate.
One vote would just kind of break a tie at some point. So you don't have, okay, that's a good
I think
explanation.
there's also a question on the original language on the whole thing, whether or not an ex officio member of a board or commission, by definition, is a voting member or a non-voting member. There was a lot of question about that all along since that last charter change.
So this question 3 means that the mayor will not be a voting member.
Correct.
Okay. So if you vote yes on that, they are not a voting member. Okay. There really are a lot of questions on the referendum. I really wish we had one more Wednesday between now and the election so that we could just discuss just the referendum questions. I think many of these are extremely important, but we're not going to be able to get through.
No, I think we are here to discuss more about the position of the city treasurers.
Right, and all the
And,
candidates. but
and I'm still really trying to find out, where the city treasurer stands in the entire structure of the city government.
just paying the bills.
Well, I don't
Approved
believe
bills.
that, because I really think that the city treasurer has more input to running the city than just signing checks.
Well, in the organizational chart, my line goes directly to the voters. So
Right.
I am the voters' representative in City Hall for financial matters. I'm watching their money for them, if you will. I get to weigh in on with opinions, whether it be at the in the pension fund, allocations of money in the pension fund. I placed the cemetery trust fund with a particular brokerage group when Bank of America decided they didn't want to be in that business anymore. But essentially, you don't. The treasurer is a policymaker within the confines of being a fiduciary for the city. The treasurer doesn't get to make broad policy judgments. I can talk to people who do.
There has to be a more important role than that. I cannot see how somebody would say, well, husband and wife thing, and the husband will say, well, I'm just writing the check and my wife can go out and buy everything that they can.
Well, that's
and
the
then
way
when
it is, isn't it?
And then when the time comes, I'm just going to write a check. I'm sure that you will probably know the pulse of the city as far as where that money is going to.
Well, isn't
Now,
that
I
part of
cannot
your relationship
all
with
of
like
a sudden
the
just
control?
allow the city council to say, oh, we're going to spend this much money for this much construction and so on. Now, I'm sure that you'll probably say, hey, wait a minute, you're going to be this
Let him
reason.
Well, the whole finance function of the city would do that. Myself, the comptroller, and the
Right.
city manager would say, wait a minute, you can't. You
Exactly.
have to stay within, you have a budget that you set. You can't then turn around and ignore it.
Yes, and then the city council will say, aha, so we cannot do that. Let's raise the taxes
That's not how.
And-
But that's out of the realm of the treasurer.
to
That has
make
nothing-
it, basically to
We'll
make
talk.
it
We'll talk
affordable
with.
for
We'll
you.
talk with those that are coming.
Well, that's what I'm
running for
saying,
city
and
council.
what I'm trying to say is that you are responsible for, you're acting as fiduciary for the taxpayers'
Exactly.
money. And here it is, here's the tax money, and yet somebody will say, hey, we'll have to spend more, and somebody will say,
can't,
well...
Ben.
They can't do
They
that.
can't.
Exactly.
Yeah.
They can't, so they will just say, well, let's just raise the taxes. So that
That
we-
would be in the
Yeah.
next budget cycle.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Now,
But if-
what is the
Listen,
role of the
listen.
treasurer?
If they did that, Ben, they're accountable to the voters.
Of course.
Okay, the voters,
Right.
if they're not happy with the taxes being raised, they'll vote them out. So that's the check and balance on the council, if they so choose to...
So the council will have to listen to you and get your expert opinion as to
It's-
what truly
They-
is
absolutely.
coming
but
out.
The council does meet every
Yeah.
budget session,
Mm-hmm.
meets with the finance department, not just the city treasurer, but the entire finance department as a group. He meets
Mm-hmm.
with the comptroller, the assessor. Is there an auditor? Do we have a city auditor?
We have a city accountant.
So
Yeah.
I don't
Well,
know if
we
they're-
have an
They
outside
have
firm
an-
that
they have
does
an
an
audit.
audit.
Okay, but
Yeah.
that's not part of
Auditory,
the,
no.
but they will meet with the council and talk about where they expect, how much they expect in revenues, the whole scope before the budget, in
yeah.
helping to put the budget
I
together.
think what Ben is trying to get at is input. What type of
Who's
input?
protecting me, basically?
Yeah, input can
yeah.
the treasurer have? The biggest input or impact, and Brian could probably speak to this, is you're on a personnel and pension board which invests the pension fund. You can apprise your colleagues of what's out there, why you think this investment is more important or better than this one. You look at things as safety, return, you know, the needs of the pension fund when folks are retiring, et cetera. That's where you can have your greatest impact as far as input goes, but you don't have the authority to just spend money. You can't do that.
Or to ship money.
Thankfully.
Yeah.
Right,
Thankfully.
right.
Yeah.
Thankfully. Well, I'm still really at the, still searching for answers as to how come there are some cities that are not making it, and how come there are some cities that
Because they
are
overspend.
just keep on
And that's-
racing
that's-
and racing the
That's
taxes.
not really true. I don't believe that's true. I think that Detroit didn't overspend. What happened was you had their major manufacturers abandon that community to go over across as soon as you had
But if that is
NAFTA.
the case, it is no different than husband and wife, and the salary of the husband has gone down. The wife cannot just go on crazy spending the same way
That's
that
true.
they're.
But the
we-
husband's still working.
And
And
the
if
husband-
necessary, the wife will come in, and that's like saying another manufacturer, another employer comes into the community, adding to the income. So I don't believe that it's as simple as they overspend.
No.
Okay.
What has happened, and this was true in Detroit and many other cities, is that spending patterns were developed during the 90s when we knew we had an economy that was going gangbusters. It started to slow down, and a lot of things changed in the early to mid-2000s when spending was galloping along, but revenues were starting to slow down. And then we came to 2008 with the crash, and the bottom fell out. And right now, revenues are our biggest problem as a municipality. Anyone will tell you that we had a just in non-tax revenue about a 3.5% drop in revenues of non-tax. Now, that may not seem like much, but that's a big nut for a city like Norwich, who depends on state and federal
Right.
money coming in. If we have a 3% drop in that, then you've got to make that up somewhere else. Plus, you had about a 2%, 2.5%, or 2.1% increase in expenditures, which was not bad based on the inflation rate. But revenues were down. So the swing gave us a 6% tax increase. So you say to yourself, well, cut spending. Well, that's not as easy as it sounds.
No,
As
it's
you well
not.
know, you were there.
It's not, because when you start looking at what services do you want to cut? You want to cut
Exactly.
education? You want to cut public safety? You know, I mean, there are certain services that a city by itself is required and
Exactly.
expected to have. You cut certain of these services and you do not attract jobs. When you think of Norwich, Norwich is not a town. This is
It's a
not a
city.
little town. This is a city.
Exactly.
And when you think about what the city requires, and it is not upholding what any city would normally provide to people that want to come either to live here, to work here, to bring their business here, when you are not up to that standard, you're not going to get the the revenue that you need to provide for those services. And then you have to make really tough decisions. And I think the city council in past years has made those kinds of tough decisions. You look at where our
Let me
okay,
put
but for the
myself in,
treasurer.
Bunny. I
All
know
right.
you're saying, well, gee, there's a downturn of the economy,
we only have
and
5 minutes,
therefore
so-
there's a lower income that's coming in. So it's really nothing but a cash flow issue. Now that you have the computer that will help you, and a real-time picture of what is coming in and what's going out, don't you think that's giving you a better insight as to what the trend is going to be, rather than wait until the end of the year and say, oh my God,
Well, we don't wait. No,
Exactly.
we don't. We never wait. But the fact of the matter is, these problems with budgets and grand list and everything else, these are things that happen over decades. It doesn't happen in one year. These are things that build and build and build. Grand lists don't get built in a year, and they don't break apart in a year. Those are decades that it takes. And we have had a real problem with that in the city in recent years, because we don't have new businesses coming in.
So you're saying that our grand list is coming down, or at least flat? And
We just had a
therefore-
reval
It's not
not too
growing.
long ago.
It's not
It went
growing.
down by about 25%.
So it
And
went
you-
down by 25%. And so what is our expenses as far as budgeting is concerned? Is it coming down by 25% as well?
Well,
or-
the grand list came down, but you have a the way the millage works, you then
Well,
compensate for it
that's what
with
I'm
millage.
saying. You know, it's very
That's why
easy
your
for.
taxes went up.
That's what I'm
okay?
saying. That it's very easy
yeah, the
for
budget-
the city to just say, well, our budget is kind
Ben,
of down,
we're
so
gonna
let
talk
us just
about-
raise the
wait,
taxes.
yeah,
And
you
I
and-
am
we
a
can-
taxpayer.
I know.
And I will say, you know, every time they're short, they will just ask.
That's not
more
what
money.
happens.
That really isn't what
That's not what happens.
Well-
And yes, that sounds like,
So who
that's
really
the
is
rhetoric.
looking? Who's really looking after my money when it gets into the city? That's what
You
I'm trying to
should,
say.
number one, you should be looking after your own money. You
Well-
should know who you're electing on November 3rd. Now, we've gone through the Board of Ed. The Board of Ed is, our education budget is one of the highest sections of our entire budget. You have to know who the members are of that Board of Education, because they're the ones who have to put that budget together. All right?
They
Now,
do, and it's always like, okay, this is how
A
much
lot
we
of
want.
what-
And they ended up with this huge budget
We
at the
have
end of the year.
2 minutes left.
And
We have
what
2
I'm
minutes
trying to
left.
say is,
I
what
would
are-
recommend, I would like
what
to
will our
encourage-
candidates say to them, and saying when
Okay.
they come to the
I would
city
really
council?
like to encourage our viewers to watch next week when we begin. Our city council candidates, you'll be meeting them. The Republican candidates will be on next week, December 21st. I'm sorry, October 21st. I'm getting close to Christmas. I'm thinking of all that money you're going to spend. So our candidates will be the Republican candidates for city council next week on October 21st. October 28th will be the Democratic candidates for city council. So to hear a very heated debate, again from Ben, about who's spending his money, please tune in. We do want to thank both of you today for coming.
You're welcome. It's a
Brian
pleasure.
Curtin, Michael
Mike.
Gualtieri, thank you both. We
You're
wish you
welcome.
both
Thanks for
a lot
having
of
us.
luck. And I want to also thank our crew who did get in here. We have Mike and Greg, both students up at Norwich Regional Tech. We couldn't do without them. So thank you both, young men. And we will see you all
And
next week.
with that, we'll say good night.